2, 1. The New York Mets, in the most fitting fashion imaginable, drop their elimination season finale ball game in the most Metsian way possible. Not only does Carlos Mendoza look like a man who has zero clue in what he's doing yet again with this Mets bullpen, starting by starting Shamanai, in which he should have never done such a thing, pulling him after not even 2 innings. Brooks really having a little bit of a jam with one-on-one away that apparently he could not get himself out of against the 676 OPS, Mr. Eric Wagaman. So Ryan Stanek comes in the ball game for one Carlos Mendoza, and what do we see transpire? Exactly what we all thought was going to happen. Ryan Stanek gets absolutely rocked. Tyler Rodgers comes in. He gets rocked. Brooks Raley, who could have finished that inning his own without a single effing problem in the world, instead finishes his regular season by having runs charged on him that should not have been charged. Carlos Mendoza so desperate, utilizing Edwin Diaz in the 5th effing inning today because he knew that he not only messed up his bullpen configuration, a bullpen game today, and an elimination game for this Mets team, but you pair that with the Mets offense that, as a surprise to absolutely nobody, yet again rolled over and died against Edward Cabrera. Bases loaded in this ball game halfway through. Pete Alonso hits the hardest hit baseball by any Met this entire season at 116 miles per hour just for it to line out in the glove there for Miami right away to end the inning. The Mets had their opportunities, not just today, but all season long. The Mets, late in this ball game, had 2 runners on in the 8th inning, and as a surprise, absolutely nobody did absolutely nothing with it. We stand here today as Mets fans and as opposing fans and people watching live on a replay, to the thousands of you, to the reaction that is, this New York Mets team is not making postseason play, but they only have themselves to blame. This is not going to be a typical Mets postgame show crash out that I do here when I get really mad about my New York Mets. I'm not only going to be emotion-filled in this one, but I'm going to tell you straight shooter how I have been the past 90 games. The Mets deserve to be in the position that they are now in. The Mets never deserve to make postseason play. They not even for a second deserve to get close to postseason play. This is a Mets team going all the way back this season to, yes, you heard that correctly, June 13th of playing 15 game below 500 baseball. A team on the road finishing the season 15 games or so below 500. A team that when it came to consistency, winning 2 or 3 games in a row, few and far in between, going all the way back to when they had a 21 game lead above 500 in the first half. The Mets just had the 3rd worst end to a season from any team in Major League Baseball history for a club that was 21 games above 500 in that same calendar season. If you want to say, who do we have to blame today? Who do we have to blame this season? Step right up and meet the New York Mets. This is not just one person to blame. This is not just 2 persons to blame. This is not 3 people, 4 people, 5 people. This is a collective effort. And part of my French kiddos in what was nothing short of a shit show 2025 regular season for the New York Mets. Anyone that actually followed them, that watched them daily, that covered them the way that I do every single day, I can tell you wholeheartedly that they built themselves, they built their coffin long before we got ourselves to the series finale today in Miami against those Marlins. And the Marlins playing spoiler also is a surprise to absolutely nobody, like they have done against this Mets team in the past. But I'm not here to talk about Miami. I'm here to talk about this New York Mets team, because now this New York Mets team does exactly what we figured that they were going to do, and they have reached the reality. The New York Mets are not, and I repeat, not making postseason play. We got a lot of donations that we're going to get to, and thank you all so much for them. I really appreciate it. But you guys see along there with me, the Mets are going to be officially out once this is all labeled. And as you guys can see, the Reds and the Mets finishing the season with the same exact record is why the New York Mets are not making postseason play. They do not have the tiebreaker on the Cincinnati Reds, who, mind you, have the tiebreaker on the New York Mets after beating the Mets in 2 out of 3 games that we saw 2.5 weeks ago. The Reds conclude their season on a 6-1 7-game stretch, winning 6 out of those 7 games against their rivals in the NL Central and the Chicago Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. While the New York Mets decide to roll over and die and lose the series in Miami against the Marlins, the same way that the Mets have lost series after winning big series the series prior all year long. How fitting it is that the New York Mets, this same exact team, mind you, goes out and puts up the same kind of performance that we have seen them do time and time again this season. Remember when the New York Mets swept the Philadelphia Phillies just under a month ago or so, right around a month at Citi Field, and then lost 3 of 4 against the Miami Marlins? Today was no different. Today was a continuation of what their entire season has been. And it was truly fitting for the Mets to lose in the fashion that they did today by, of course, not having anything going on the consistency front whatsoever. I will get to everyone's donations here soon, people. I promise. Thank you so much to everybody hitting that like and subscribe on your win as we live react and break down together the season officially being over for the New York Mets. And the reason why the New York Mets season is over has a lot to do with yet again an offense that rolled over and died. Say what you will about Carlos Mendoza's incompetence with this bullpen. I'm going to have plenty more to say about that in our post-game show, our last post-game show of the calendar season. But before we talk a bit on this offense, and before I answer a lot of your comments, questions, and concerns, I would just like to take a quick moment to sincerely thank every single one of my followers that has been a follower from start to finish this year. If you're new and if this is the first time you're watching my content, thank you so much for being here, folks. We cover the New York Mets, win, lose, or draw after every single game throughout the course of the season. I take great pride and great pleasure in doing these post-game shows every single day for each and every one of you. And it's an absolute shame that I have to sit here today to give you guys one final breakdown on yet another absolutely piss poor ball game presented by the New York Mets. But everybody that has went out of their way to be here, a part of the family, part of the WardyNYM platform, the largest Mets platform, cover the Mets here daily on YouTube every single day of the week for all things Mets news, rumors, and everything else in between. Everybody, sincerely, thank you so much for your likes, your subscriptions, your donations, and everything in between that we're going to address today. You guys make my year 10 times greater than it otherwise would be as a normal Mets fan. I would be dying in misery right now by myself. Instead, I'm doing it with the thousands of you relatable Mets fans that know exactly the pain that I'm enduring and that we're unfortunately going to continue to endure for a Mets team that now has a long, very lengthy road when it comes to the offseason ahead. This is a Mets team now that has an abundance of questions that need to be answered as to what is next for them when it comes to manager, what is next for them when it comes to the roster, what is next for them when it comes to every aspect of this team, even from David Stearns down. Fans are going to have rightful questions. And how can you not have questions as a Mets fan? As for the third time in a 5-year span, the New York Mets do not make postseason play in the Steve Cohen regime. The same Steve Cohen, the owner, the heralded fan favorite as a diehard fan who grew up a Mets fan to finally buy the New York Mets. I love Steve, and it's never for lack of effort on his end. But he gave the Mets a promise that unfortunately is not becoming a reality. A World Series championship in the first 3 to 5 years as Mets owner. He will now enter year 6 as a New York Mets owner, looking more a failure than success after all the billions of dollars that he has spent since acquiring this organization. If you guys do not think that Steve Cohen is pissed off beyond belief, I have a bridge to sell you. And if you do not think that the Mets aren't going to be quick to break up a core group of the Mets offense that finished today's game 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position and left 10 on base, I too have a bridge to sell you. If you don't think that the Mets are going to make serious changes to their rotation, including potentially trading veterans, including guys like Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, David Peterson, the list goes on. I too have a bridge to sell you. Is it a lock that they will be traded? No. But the idea that they will not consider such a thing is also silly. This Mets bullpen in the final game of the regular season, the Mets and Carlos Mendoza utilize a reliever per inning. Manaea, Brazo, Raley, Stanek, Rodgers, Diaz, Helsley, Soto. They were one pitcher shy from going literally 9 pitchers, 9 innings basically. Instead, we get an absolute shit show of a ball game for the New York Mets and for potentially Carlos Mendoza's final game as New York Mets manager. Is it a lock that Mendy will no longer be manager? No, it most certainly isn't. And because it's not a lock is why we're going to have great discourse and great back and forth talking all about what is wrong with Mendoza versus what are the few things right now that appear to be right. On the offensive end, look at this, everybody. Look at it, read it, and weep. Pay attention, because this very well could be the final game that we see for multiple Mets batters, including Pete Alonso, including Mark Vientos, including Jeff McNeil, including Cedric Mullins, including Ronnie Mauricio. If you guys believe the Mets are going to run it back with this core group, they're going to run it back with the infield group of Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio, Acuna, I got a bridge to sell you. If you think that they are a lock to run it back there with Pete Alonso without some lengthy negotiation ahead, I have a bridge to sell you. If you think that Edwin Diaz returning next season is a lock from happening, as he will inevitably opt out of his contract, I have a bridge to sell you. The point that I'm trying to make, Mets fans, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is that if you are not mentally prepared already for the wrath that is going to be Steve Cohen and this Mets team making drastic changes, then you better get ready for it now, because it's going to be significant, and we are going to see things that have changed with this team in more ways than one, beginning as soon as they get a chance to this offseason. I firmly believe that we saw the final games as a New York Met for players like Jeff McNeil, and obviously a lot of the expiring contracts, a lot of the relievers that we saw David Stearns acquire heading into the trade deadline. There's only one reliever outside of everybody else I hope to see return to this Mets team that is a free agent at the end of the season, and that is Tyler Rogers, even with him not looking great today. If it ain't for Rogers, I'm not looking at many other guys I want back in this bullpen outside of someone like Brooks Raley, who thankfully the Mets have under a club option right now. And there are a boatload of comments that you guys have for me. So let me go ahead and try to rapid fire answer a bunch of these right here, right now, everybody. And then let's go on to breaking everything else down. We're not going play by play here, pitch by pitch, and what transpired in this ball game. You guys know what happened, but I'm going to give you yet again the quick summary. This was a ball game that was headlined by the Mets and the Marlins not getting any offense going until the Marlins pounced on this Mets bullpen there in the fourth inning. As we saw Brooks Raley exit that ball game with one on and one away, Carlos Mendoza truly thought it was in the team's best interest to part ways with our best reliever option, not named Edwin Diaz, in your elimination game to wrap up the season. It didn't make sense then, and most certainly does not make sense now. And that, my friends, is another key aspect to take a look at and say to yourself, yeah, Carlos Mendoza did not ever have it as a proper in-game manager this season. And with the exception of what many did a week or so ago, in which the Mets still lost that ball game there, where they had Mark Vientos pinch hit for the game-tying runs to come in, and he did that in the eighth inning. And then to see what we saw there in Terrens get on with a leadoff single, Syria pinch runner, and then Soto tied in the ninth, and the Mets still lost that ball game in extras a week or so ago. That was the last time I felt like Carlos Mendoza made actual good, proper in-game decisions, and he still cost the Mets by having Edwin Diaz out of the ball game on just a handful of pitches. So when we look at what Mendy has done wrong this season, I think we have an endless laundry list of examples that we can choose from. I'm still hung up on Carlos Mendoza not utilizing Jesse Winker and the 2024 NLCS. I said I would get over it. I said I wouldn't care, but I'm sitting here talking to you guys a year later, and I still care. If that matters to me then, just imagine how much all the other incompetent decisions that Mendoza made this season matters to me now. To say the Mets need a change in coaching is an understatement. To say that Mendy is a lock to return is also far from the truth. To say that Mendoza is a lock to be fired is also necessarily not a lock to happen. Immediate reaction, everybody. I want to see it from you guys on a scale of 1 to 10. Spam in the live chat into our thousands of replay viewers in the comments down below as we break down the end of the Mets 2025 season as they have officially been eliminated from wildcard play. My question to you guys is simple. On a scale of 1 to 10, how disappointed are you with this Mets season? I think it goes without saying it's an easy 10 for yours truly. How can it not be? But if you guys feel differently, I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm going to get very hot-headed. I'm going to get very ranty here in a second, but I do want to address some comments that have been relayed since then. So let's get into all of them right here, right now. And it starts with the following. We see here, shut up by the Marlins, disgraceful, says Philly Raider. That's an understatement. Carl says, is it corny? I'm holding back tears. No, I don't think it's corny. If you're a diehard Mets fan, you're going to get emotional a day like today because this team is a part of your daily life. The same way it's a part of your daily life for you guys is the same way it most certainly is for me. I work my entire life around the Mets and have the past 5 years as someone who covers them full-time for a living. My next steps moving forward now in the offseason will be ever changing than what they have been because I'm going to really miss these nightly post-game shows covering the Mets to the thousands of you guys. But the good news, everybody, is that while I hate to see the year come to an end, it's bittersweet because I'm not going anywhere. We will still be having consistent daily coverage covering the Mets for the most part every single day, even what's going to be a slog of a month of October. So things are a little sporadic. That is why, because I know everyone needs a grieving period, but be on the lookout. We're going to continue to pump out content right away because that's what we always do here on the platform. Win, lose, or draw, rain, or shine, we will be here every step of the way for you guys. And that's as a further thank you for being amazing supporters year in and year out here on the WardyNYM platform. Thank you so much, guys. We got Pat W with a $5 holla says, not that I feel like partying after that, but how about the 2025 season of Wardy? Wake, let's see, at NYC Bar this weekend. Can we make a fundraiser if you like? What to do to hang out at NYC Bar this weekend? I think what we need to do, Pat, is we need to figure out an event potentially this offseason as a Mets gathering. I love the idea of doing something that's basically just a meet and greet with me where we hang out and talk shop at Mets at a fun Mets related bar in New York. I think honestly that has a lot of legs of actually becoming a reality this offseason. So thank you, Pat, for throwing out that idea. And to respond to that, don't be surprised if we do something this offseason as a further thank you to interact in the community before we do our next Wardy Day, which will be happening next season. There will be more than one event barring changes too. So we're very excited for 2026. But right now we're here to talk about the Mets faltering in the worst way possible, in the most Metsian way possible. A team that was overmanaged to death today by Carlos Mendoza when looking at their bullpen, and an offense that rolled over and died in more ways than one, going 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position. The story of the Mets season right before our very eyes yet again. Frank, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that. Mike says, $5 holla. Mendoza was just flat out not good this year, but with the pitching and roster turnover all year and top-heavy roster, he had constant obstacles to face. He did, and that's why two things can be true at the same time. I hate the people out there that are saying to themselves, oh, Wardy, how can you put all this blame on Carlos Mendoza and not David Stearns? Or, hey, Wardy, how can you put all this blame on these guys and not the players? Why can't you guys grasp the reality that you can properly critique all aspects of a team? David Stearns had a horrendous year, too, as a president. There is no other ifs, ands, or buts about it. Were there factors beyond his control that led to that point? Absolutely. Doesn't change the fact that he still not have a good year as president. David Stearns made 2 good moves for the Mets, all things considered, this year, and they were as follows. That was Clay Holmes and Brooks Raley. Name me any other move that was overly significant for this team with the exception of Alonso returning and Soto. Not that Stearns didn't have his hands involved there, but it goes without saying, Steve Cohen is the main reason as to why the Mets were able to bring those players in. One to return and another to land here on the largest contract in North American sports history. Are we having this conversation of Steve Cohen as owner right now? No. We're talking about another Ponzi regime type season where the Mets don't make playoffs, in which their rotation is fickle. But oh, wait, this isn't the Wilpons. This is the 2025 New York Mets. Isn't that crazy, everybody? No matter the billions of dollars that you spend total that Steve Cohen has done, it will not change the stank and the incompetence that comes with Mets fandom and being the New York Mets. The Mets found endless ways to get themselves in front of themselves for the worse. Instead of taking the right step forward, they continue to take 10 steps back. So as we evaluate more on this season, what has went wrong for this team? Yes, Carlos Mendoza, so many things went wrong for him this year. Yes, so many things went wrong for David Stearns. But if you don't think it's time to hold players accountable, what is it? Okay, I'm sorry. But miss me with the nonsense that, oh, we have to focus on keeping the core group together because we love our guys. No, what I love is winning. And the Mets have not consistently won at all my entire lifetime as a Mets fan. And I don't know if they ever will at this rate. But I'm never going to find out if they continue these ways of being stubborn and holding on to guys too long. And then the counter is, if you're not holding on to guys too long, it's giving up on guys too soon that we have seen from previous regimes. There needs to be a foundation of consistency, and there needs to be a mutual understanding front office down on what the expectation is in this organization. Yet I look here today at this Mets team that is yet again out of postseason play for 3 out of 5 years under Steve Cohen. And what do I see? A team with no identity, a team that's lifeless, a team that looks like they could not give a rat's ass if the season ended today. Obviously, that is not true. I know a lot of players are upset and frustrated, especially knowing that they're never going to all play together again. That's another key factor to bear in mind. Think about the amount of great memories that these players make with each other, and they're never going to be the same core group again. Starling Marte has played his last game as a New York Met. Mark Vientos may have just played his last game as a New York Met. Jeff McNeil may very well have just played his last game as a New York Met. Well, you know how we do our videos every single year about players who will not return the Mets? This is going to be the most significant one yet, because I think we are not only going to be expected to see an overhaul of change, but with expiring contracts and with players that are just not moving the needle and moving lateral at best, it is inevitable that the Mets make changes of significance, hopefully for the better for this organization. Otherwise, we're going to have yet another season heading into 2026 where you spend big in the offseason and you still miss the mark, because money does not equate for aura. Money does not equate for vibes. Money does not equate for a proper clubhouse mentality that just naturally happens throughout the course of the season. What did the Mets not do well from the start of the season? That was by bringing in someone who could really balance them the way that Jose Iglesias and JD Martinez got them right, with veteran leadership and fun, loose excitement that kept the Mets playing loose like they had nothing to lose, even when they were still winning a lot of baseball games and were playing well above 500 after they were in that 11-game below 500 rut last year. They were tense from the start of the year. When they got to the expectation of 21 games above 500, they had simply no clue how to meet said expectation, which is why we sit here talking today about a team that yet again crumbled as soon as they had an expectation to actually go out and do what they were invested the millions upon millions of dollars to initially do heading into the season itself. Big thank you for the donation. I appreciate that. He says, thank you for what you do, Wardy. Wish we were celebrating more baseball, but I hope to see you next year down in Jupiter, Florida for spring training. Yes, my friend, I will most certainly see you there down in spring training. WBC next year as well, so solid chance that I'll be partaking in some of that like I did back in 2023. Going down the list here, Wardy, I'm leaning on you for the next 6 months, bro. Thanks for all you do. Thank you so much, NYM Mets. I appreciate that. Don't worry. I got you guys. We got a lot more content coming for you guys that you'll be seeing here, as well as with the New York Post, as well as I'll be having reoccurring segments in the Bleacher Report after MLB topics. As we are now in a postseason play, I'll be doing weekly MLB playoff related things for them, not Mets related, unfortunately, as well as I'll be pumping out a lot more content, everybody, at the Wardy MLB YouTube channel, including either in-game watch parties or post-game reactions to certain playoff games that happen throughout the course of playoffs. So make sure that you guys are subscribed to Wardy MLB in case you haven't already, as well as hitting that like and subscribe button on your way. And we have over 1,000 concurrent viewers, everybody. All I'm asking is that some of you guys hit that like and subscribe button. Help us get to 700 plus likes by the end of the live show. We already have over 300 right now, going back to when we were initially doing our watch party with Jake Brown. So continue to smash those buttons and help us get to 35,000 subscribers, folks, because once we hit that milestone, and we're only 100 subs away, mind you, we are giving away a jersey to one lucky subscriber on the platform just for subbing to WardyNYM. So be in on it if you haven't already. Thank you so much for that, guys. Zach with a $5 donation states the following: for the record, we're rooting for LA over Cincy. Zach, no, I'm not rooting for either. I don't give a rat's ass what happens in the National League as far as I'm concerned. I'm a Seattle Mariners and Boston Red Sox fan moving forward this postseason. I quite literally cannot give a flying FUCK about anything that happens in the National League. I will pay attention. I may have reactions to it. I may have some input, but will I care? No. If anything, I just don't want the teams I hate to actually have success, and that goes without saying. Thank you so much for the donation, though. I appreciate that. Mario with the $10 holla says, work is over for me this season until 2026. For those that don't know, Mario, great member of the platform. He works at Citi Field. Dreaded memes run on us for sure. And I'm not excited for the Ranger hockey. Oh, and you Yanks fans here to watch NYR hockey, you're suffering with me and Wardy. That is true. We do have a commonality there. Thank you so much for the donation. Hopefully our Rangers play well this year, but they have a lot of things about their roster that I don't love, that I don't think Mike Sullivan's going to be able to fix in year one. Dave with the $10 holla. Love you, Dave. Thank you so much. Greg Soto, Ryan Stanek, Cedric Mullins, Ryan Helsley, Jeff McNeil, Mark Vientos, Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, Frankie Montas, Carlos Mendoza, Eric Chavez, Jeremy Barnes, Jeremy Hefner, all should be gone. We are most certainly going to see a change. And I think a lot of those guys are not going to return. I don't think you're wrong for saying that. Nick, thank you for the $20 donation. Nick states the following: appreciate all you do, Wardy. Looking forward to all your off-season content and following the year to come, God willing. You're the man, and as always, LFGM, Nick, thank you so much for being a great supporter throughout the year, and thank you for becoming a member, too. I appreciate that. Membership options are linked down below in the description for anyone that has interest here. AD with the $5 holla, thank you so much. Captain Solo says, $2 holla, sell the Mets. They are disgraced in New York. They're not going to sell, especially when we finally have an owner that cares, that is trying to put his best foot forward every single season. Unfortunately, the owners put a lot of valiant effort in, but it still has not moved the needle enough. This Mets team is just as much of a laughingstock this season as you could see that they were 5 years ago. And I mean that in the sense of not living up to expectations. It's really hard not to be a laughingstock this year when you don't make playoffs in year one. Well, Juan Soto having the best regular season in Mets team franchise history from any single batter that has actually gotten on to home plate for this Mets offense. Prometheus with the donation. Thank you so much. KC 2015, George Brett, Marlins 2025, Derek Jeter. These teams make contact. The Mets should get Wally Bachman a call and start tapping into some toughness here. Tap into their past and the F optics win. Yeah, I don't disagree with you in the sense that, F optics, but Wally Bachman is a man who doesn't really have any managerial experience much at the major league level. The Mets are not going to be going out of their way to make that happen. Alonso says he will opt out of his contract and re-enter free agency. No shit, Sherlock. We always knew that. As expected, everybody, we not only see Alonso right now opting out, and we also know that Edwin Diaz is going to opt out. Please bear in mind, everybody, to not freak out by the opt-outs that happen with the Mets and their contracts for players. Anyone that can opt out is going to opt out because they're going to be seeking more money. That's how this works, just in case you guys are wondering. Alonso can still return just like what he did last offseason. It's the same go-around again when we're talking about what is happening with the Mets and their roster with Alonso. I would just like to make that clear. So before anyone kind of gets their you-know-what's in a bunch, that is the story there. Now, thank you so much for the donation. Daniel Cap's great member of 17 months, Daniel. 7 of the last 9 years, no playoffs. Time to clean house. Daniel, the fact that you didn't gift memberships much at all this season tells us all we need to know. For those that don't know, Daniel Caps is a great loyal member here who gifted memberships a lot last year on the platform when the Mets had a lot of their big wins. This year, I barely saw him because the Mets stopped winning once we got to June for the most part. And I don't blame him for being tapped out. I'd be just as disappointed or just as frustrated, rightfully so. Philly with $5 Hollow says, as a Phillies fan, I feel it for you. As it has been a rough year for y'all. No doubt Mendoza has to go, but that roster needs to make a move. Peace, Wardy. Thank you, my guy. I appreciate that. Listen, best of luck to you. I hope you have an entertaining playoff run for your Phillies. I hope the Phillies lose in a dramatic fashion, and I say that selfishly as a Mets fan. I always will, as someone who despises Phillies and their fans, but I appreciate the good ones like yourself. I appreciate the respective support. So thank you so much, my friend. Again, best of luck. If the Phillies do have success in this playoff run, I won't be happy, but I'll be happy for individuals like yourself at least. So thank you again for that. Scott with $5 Hall says, having you make sense of our misery feels like you call it like it is. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Scott. I know I had terrible wordplay there on my end, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. And listen, I'm just trying to have you guys understand the matter of fact, the reality of the circumstance for this Mets team, because there were so many things that led to this point. And that's why I really hope that most people that come across this live show and to the replay viewers do not come take away by saying, oh, the Mets just had a massive collapse and that's why they are where they were at. No, everybody, this is not about it being the worst collapse in Mets franchise history. That is farthest thing from the truth. This is not a collapse. This has been a 3.5, if not 4-month free fall going back to June 13th. If you guys understand the context of how this season has went, you should not at all be surprised that we are in the current position that we are now in. They put themselves in this position and they have themselves to blame, which is why I'm not going to scream my head off every single second with this team, because one, they don't deserve it, and two, I've already done that this entire season. What I'm here to talk shop and be a straight shooter with you. This is the reality. The reality is that a lot of the players that you guys like and have loved and build relationships with in this organization will not be here next season. The reality is that Carlos Mendoza may very well have finished his already 2-year manager tenure as a New York Mets manager. There is a great reality that the Mets clean house on the coaching staff in various ways, including, yes, you guessed it, finally parting ways with Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes. We've had some people say, oh, is Eric Chavez and Jeremy Barnes going to return? If Eric Chavez is the Mets hitting coach next season, I honestly may go on strike and not even begin the season in postseason coverage. Not postseason, when it comes to our post-game coverage. That is how certain I am that we will not see him next season. So everybody buckle up, enjoy those final last-minute Instagram posts that he gets out, because they will be the last ones that he does as a New York Mets coach. You cannot sell to the fan base, nor can you sell to people trying to buy in on tickets next year that, mind you, the Mets are continuing to raise prices for. Yeah, listen to this, everybody. You guys want a little sneak peek? So I am a part of a priority list with the Mets to get early access to certain tickets to help set up events for next season. And the selling point of getting early access, I was approached with the idea of having a portion of the stadium blocked off for me for another Wardy day for playoffs if the Mets got to the NLDS. But it would require a deposit that would be so significant for events for next year that would be a big loss for me now, with just the hopes that the Mets would make the NLDS, with the hopes of them making it. So one, thank God I did not do that. I have the understanding gut feeling that this team is not it this year. And secondly, separately, be on the lookout, because we are going to be having some really exciting events happen at Citi Field next year. Hopefully, when the Mets actually show a level of excitement to have us excited and to be a part of whatever they're going to be doing next year. Because what is the expectation for next season? It's to make playoffs. We know this. But will they make playoffs? Who the hell knows? There's one thing that I learned from this season that I honestly can laugh at, is that no matter how good a team is on paper, no matter how much money your owner invests in you, you should never view playoffs as a lock. And my genuine first mistake that I made this season was thinking all the way through, really up until we got ourselves more into the thick of summer, that playoffs would be a lock for this Mets team. That's shame on me for thinking otherwise, seriously. And yes, we know that Pete Alonso will opt out. That's not shocking news to anybody first chiming in. Alonso will opt out. Edwin Diaz will opt out. Anyone that is going to be making a bigger bag than what they're currently making from the New York Mets will opt out from their contracts if they're able to. We'll have a bunch of free agents that'll be hitting the free agent market. We're going to talk a lot about who the Mets should give qualified offers to versus who they shouldn't, because be on the lookout. They obviously are going to go ahead and be doing things of that nature as well. The Mets are going to be trying to take full advantage of the qualifying offer, as a matter of fact. So don't be surprised when you see that happen. JT with a $10 donation says, thanks for all you do, Wardy. You're part of my daily routine all year, especially during the 162. This one hurts, not going to lie. Hopefully things change in the offseason. Hopefully, Dean, my guy. But yes, be on the lookout because we will also be live probably tomorrow. My assumption right now, everybody, is that we'll have a video dropping earlier in the day, but then we'll also have a live show tomorrow evening. I think we're going to do our best, to the best of our possibility here. We're going to try to pump out daily content of at least 1 to 2 forms of content every single day all season long. That's the goal. That's what we're looking to do. So you guys will get a video tomorrow. You guys will also probably get a live stream in the evening, barring changes, because I think that live stream might be a perfect time to take on live callers if you guys would like to vent, share your opinions on the season wrapping up and on what is next for this team, among other things. So be on the lookout for all that, everybody, and thank you guys kindly for it. The video that'll be dropping tomorrow, if not early in the day, then in the evening, be on the lookout. It'll be a banger of a video. It'll be a video that's already going to cause a lot of controversy, but it needs to be said. This is the time of the offseason, and we're not going to hold anything back. We are going to straight shoot it and tell you guys what exactly is going on in Mets land, what my assumptions are, what my expectation is for what the Mets are going to change about this team heading into 2026. Because my expectation is that it's going to be a hell of a lot different than what it's been. And any dunce here, and Mr. Shah, I'm going to address you once, and then that's all I'm going to give you because that's all it deserves. Anyone that thinks that the Mets collapse is something greater than their own incompetence this year is an idiot. And that goes without saying. But if you guys think that, oh, they were hexed or they were cursed by various things that happened with them and what they supported this season or what they didn't support, whatever the case may be, guys, this just comes down to Mets being a bad baseball team more often than not this year. Once you understand that reality, you know that the Mets are in the position that they're in, and no one should be shocked by it. Pat, thank you for the donation. Love you, Pat. He says, condolences, my friend. You're welcome to join the Yankees bandwagon. I'd rather do a lot of heinous things than that, is what I have to say about that. Thank you so much for the donation, though, Pat. I appreciate it. Condolences. And the math, but the math goes in hand with that month being the month. That doesn't account for the injuries that happened in the rotation in June that were out of people's hands, among other things. But yes, I know people are going to find a narrative and try to run with it. I get it. Thank you for the donation, Pat. I love you. Mark with the $5 haul says, sad, mad, yes. Still a Mets fan forever. Always. Love you, Mark. Thank you so much for the kind words and the support, Mark. I hope you and your family are doing fantastic. Thank you so much, CR8 with the kind words too in the chat. I don't know how to pronounce your name because there's a bunch of numbers and letters, but thank you kindly. I really do appreciate that. Now, guys, let's see what is happening from Carlos Mendoza and others. Let's hear if they have a quick word that they would like to share with us before we continue on our latest and final Mets postgame show of the 2025 season. Can't believe I'm actually saying that today, guys. I was fearful of it. We all had it in the back of our mind that was a possibility, but the fact that it's a reality now is very frustrating. I have to be frank. And guys, in case you guys want to hear it from the horse's mouth himself, not that he's a horse or anything, Pete Alonso, when discussing his future with the New York Mets. Here you go. I actually apologize, everybody. I just realized I'm playing a video, but it won't play the audio for you because I'm streaming this through playback and not through my current streaming software. So that's on me. No worries. You don't worry about the audio. All you're hearing from Alonso is doing the same laps that he always does when he's explaining at the end of the season, like, I love to be here, yada, yada, yada. I will opt out, and we'll kind of move on from there. He literally says, playing for this organization, this city, they've continued to believe in me. I love playing here. There's some great guys in this clubhouse, some great people on the staff. Every single day, it's been a pleasure coming to work and putting on the orange and blue. I really appreciate it and have been nothing but full of gratitude every single day. Nothing is guaranteed, but we'll see what happens. I love being a Met. Hopefully, they've appreciated me the same. So, again, Alonso setting himself up, obviously, the Scott Boras client. He's not going to say anything that, he could hurt himself when it comes to the offseason, what he plans to do there. So that's what we got from Pete. Also asked about the Mets failing to put together put all together this season. He said, I don't really know. I haven't even reflected on anything. It's tough to wrap your mind around. It was never in anyone's mind that we'd be in the spot. And that's been more the disbelief. When we saw Alonso line out there to left earlier in this ball game at 116 miles per hour off the bat to strand bases loaded, his shocked face was really how he's felt this season. But what I can't seem to understand is how have we won 3.5, 4 months of this Mets team being still shocked and how the results have not been there? How are we still in that same predicament? How did it take them this long? And I guess it makes sense that they're in the spot that they're in, because if they were able to figure out something, then they would be winning and they would be in postseason play right now. So there is something to be accounted for the lack of ability to figure out what went wrong this year. What were the greater issues behind the obvious in the rotation? Where were things missed in that clubhouse? That's a great question. And because of that, I really do think that we're also in a spot where this Mets team, they need to have a great reality check as to what their priorities are and what they think is best to build this organization philosophy-wise from front office down heading into next season. Because I'm sorry, but I really think it's a terrible look to have your leading slugger outside of Juan Soto look completely in disbelief as to how we got in the position that we did, as if we haven't seen exactly what the flaws have been verbatim the past north of 4 months. Like, that genuinely pisses me off. How do you not understand how we got to this point? Do you really live that much in the moment, Alonso? If so, then okay. But it's like, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I really am. Carlos Mendoza says, until we win, it's going to be attached to all of us. I'm being attached on, was asked about this Mets season being attached into the players and coaches and legacies. Mendoza was asked that he thinks the Mets may have been what they have been missing this season. He replies, we had a hard time putting everything together, but it's hard to just blame one specific area. You're right. It is hard to blame one specific area, but I can at least enlighten you a little bit. It starts with the rotation. It starts with a bullpen that was overly taxed, heavily taxed more than any other bullpen in baseball. It starts with terrible in-game decisions by yours truly. And it starts with being 2 steps behind more ways than one this team has been all season long, and various aspects of their in-game decision, their pre-game decision, and their continued roster decisions throughout the course of the season. And let's not forget the player personnel just not stepping up at all when needed to. When we were looking for them to step up and to have that moment, they literally never had that moment. The same thing that we were longing for, going all the way back into the month of June and hoping that things would be different for this Mets team, praying that they would have themselves a miraculous comeback victory outside of what they just did in Wrigley a couple days ago. They haven't done that all season long. So this is not surprising. This is the reality. They were not a good baseball team. Carlos Mendoza says, was asked if he's concerned about his future in the Mets organization. When you're managing a team that has a lot of expectations, you go home, questions like this are going to come. That's part of it. Well, I know I'm glad to see that Mendy at least understands that there's a reality where he will not be here. I think it would be a worse look if he went out to the media and said, I'm fully anticipating to be here, barring changes, because he knows where he's been at fault. And he needs to reflect, because and there is at all a chance that Carlos Mendoza is manager of this Mets team next year, which feels slim right now. It's a really tough sell, a far tougher sell over the past week than it was a week prior. It just has gotten worse and worse and worse for Mendoza. But if there's any chance, a sliver of a chance that Mendoza is not fired, he needs to make some serious changes with his own managerial decision and understanding. He needs to be able to adapt as manager the way that he was not able to adapt at all what felt like throughout the course of the season, in a way that the Mets needed him to, is the most important aspect here. You see, I take responsibility. I'm the manager. It starts with me. I've got to make a long look here, how I need to get better, says Mendoza. So I really hope that he does take that hard on look, regardless on if he's Mets manager next year or not. Regardless of what Mendy does in his professional career as a coach, I really hope he takes a long, hard look and breaks down a lot of the film this offseason of what he did wrong and where he can make sure that he's making the right decisions moving forward in whatever capacity may be as either a coach for the Mets or outside the organization. There's no word to describe what we're going through. It's pain, it's frustration, you name it. Mendoza talks about the emotions of the Mets being eliminated from postseason contention on the final day of the season. That is what he had to say. So, yes, as you can tell, definitely deflating. And as Gary Cohen said it best on the broadcast today, one of the most disappointing years that the Mets have ever suffered through their 64-year history, Gary Cohen. And I don't blame him. You could really tell how fed up they were by the end of this. And Andy Martino, as always, expected to throw cold water on this. Listen, And he's going to write something this evening to tell you guys why you shouldn't expect many to be fired. And then you know what's going to happen. We will find out more rumblings as we get further into the offseason about why Carlos Mendoza's job is not safe. And you will see Andy write a column about why that has now changed and why we are now talking about Mehdi potentially being on the hot seat. All Andy is doing is rebutting what David Stern stated on a podcast with Joel Sherman and John Heyman of the New York Post, friends of the platform here. Shout out to the Post as always, enjoying my work with them on the show podcast that they have. They had David Stearns on a couple weeks ago, and David said, Mehdi's doing a great job. Don't anticipate him going anywhere, that kind of thing. If we hear Stearns have his presser and say things different from that, then we have ourselves a different discussion. Then we have ourselves the warranted discussion, which is the following. The Mets not only have Mehdi on the hot seat, but they're already seeking options to replace him. Once we get to that point, we will talk about it. But to think that Mendy's a lock right now, I don't anticipate to be the case. Nor do I think it's a lock that he will be fired either. And that's what I told you guys going back in this. There is a reality where, again, Mendy doesn't go anywhere, and you guys aren't going to love it. You might not be able to stomach it, but it's still very much a possibility. Mets Online, thank you for the donation. I'm not going to reply to what you said, but know that I did find it funny. So thank you for that donation. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, guys, so everybody watching live at a replay, my next question is as follows. I think this is a simpler one. Do you believe that Carlos Mendoza deserves to be fired? It's a simple yes or it's a simple no. I think a lot of people are under the impression that it's yes, he should be fired. And my response to this is pretty much everything I've just been saying to you. Yeah, there's a lot of things to say he should be fired versus why he shouldn't be fired. I think right now, Carlos Mendoza did too much damage to warrant a return for this Mets team. I think it's too much of a hard sell. The same way that I think it's a terrible organizational look to have another year of a new manager. I think it's a really bad look to have 4 managers in a 6-year span with one ownership group. I think it's honestly embarrassing, if I'm being quite honest with you, if that is the route the Mets go. I think it's something that Steve Cohen should be embarrassed by. Furthermore, I think it's something that Steve Cohen should not only be embarrassed by, but should really give him a greater reality check as to how he needs to evaluate who he hires and the control that they have. Because we have seen Steve Cohen, never for the lack of effort, put in a lot of effort as Mets owner since becoming owner in the fall of 2020. But what has held true since that time has been an owner that's gotten too involved in areas that didn't benefit the Mets as much as we initially hoped. Maybe great immediate success, but hurts the long-term vision. It's one thing or the other. And I do not believe that Mendoza at all did enough good managing this year to warrant a return. But I also completely understand the rebuttal, which is as follows. He's in his second year as a first-time manager. He's a David Stearns hire, so you know he's going to have a greater leash than anyone else. And he's someone that got dealt a terrible hand by utilizing 47 pitchers, which is the most pitchers ever utilized in a single season by a Major League Baseball club. He had a rotation that was in shambles by halfway through the season, that was out of his control, and a president that was stubborn on call-ups as to when they would happen, and they would happen, and acquiring for veteran depth options to at least help keep the rotation afloat that wouldn't have costed you a king's ransom. Instead, he did none of the sort that being in Stearns, and it came back to bite them. And again, this is not to say that everything's on David, nor is this to say that everything here is on what is going on with Mendoza. But there's something to be said about this being a truly collective effort and so many things going wrong. NYI Bike, the only one who's a dunce in here is you. I get it. You probably have your what's in a twist because the Mets lost. But if you don't think that I care about literally the people who invest in the platform every single day, I have a bridge to sell you. It's fitting that someone as ill-minded and as low IQ as yourself is in the chat because you, my friend, are supporting the platform. You, my friend, are giving ad revenue. And now you're never going to be able to comment in the chat again, all just because you had to be an idiot and to say something so out of pocket. Genuinely, if any of you guys think that I don't do this for not only the love of the game, but also because it's my full job and it's because I take great pride in covering this for thousands of Mets fans daily, I got a bridge to sell you. Like the fact that people genuinely believe that I'm ill-minded to the point that I'm doing this for the sake of no self-satisfaction, just doing this because I want your money is crazy. Now, is this my job? Absolutely. And your money has been important to me. Your money is what keeps me afloat with ad revenue, with donations and sponsorships. That's something I'll be very transparent by because it's a fact. Everyone knows that. So I'm not going to go on the spiel to re-explain myself there. That's common sense. When you support a creator that has sponsors and things, it helps them financially and it helps them stay afloat, because without that, I would not be able to do this daily for you guys, because I would not be able to have this be my full-time job. So to everybody, thank you so much, as always, for constantly supporting, to the new subscribers, to the previous subscribers, and everyone else in between. You have truly been amazing, and I cannot thank every single one of you guys enough. Seriously. Let's go up here because there's another comment I wanted. I think there was a donation I want to get to. Let's go ahead and get into it, everybody. Let me go here. Let's go right here. And let's get to this one. Uh, Problem with the core of this team, going back to 2021, says KCB, has never stopped the bleeding when things went wrong. It's a player's problem, not manager. And you're right. And that's why I think that we really do need to see an overhaul when looking at the core group of this team. That's why I've been adamant by saying that there needs to be a change. And this goes beyond coaching staff the same way that this goes beyond just front office. It's a collective effort on what the Mets need to change here and do, everybody. And now, everybody, now that the season has officially come to a close, Pete Alonso has officially opted out of his contract. Edwin Diaz is destined to opt out of his contract as well. Let's now take a brief look at the conclusion of the New York Mets and their season, everybody. Let's take a look at the New York Mets finishing the year at 83-77 and how their individual player performances ended. Because, folks, it is as follows. Let me relay to each and every one of you these stats for this New York Mets team and their final wrap up of the year now. And I'm not just talking about today's game stats. I'm talking overall what happened with the New York Mets this season when we take a look at these players. All right, folks, going down the laundry list. Let's do it. We're going to rapid fire. Starting off in the pitching, Huascar Brosman finishes his 2025 regular season with the Mets with a 3.57 ERA and 63 innings. He will be under club control next season, so expect Brazo back. Edwin Diaz finishes his final potential season with the New York Mets as he will opt out of his contract. May return, but we're going to need things to go right in order for that to happen. With David Stearns, mind you, a 1.63 ERA, 98 strikeouts, and a .87 whip in his 62-game season with the New York Mets. Edwin Diaz, Huascar Brosman, now Ryan Helsley. Helsley, who did not start strong, but finished the year on a much stronger note with his New York Mets team, finishes his Mets tenure still with a 7.2 ERA in 22 games for the New York Mets. Helsley, who will be looking for closer money in this offseason, will more than likely not return to this Mets team unless we do see a change. All right, folks, we good? My bad. I think I just froze for a second. If I did just freeze for a second, I apologize, but I think we're all good and back in this. Okay. As we continue on in here, everybody, Ryan Helsley, not a guy that I'm anticipating to return to this Mets team. Add him to the laundry list of players that will not be returning for 2026 and beyond, barring changes. The only way I see Helsley returning is if the Mets sign him as a closer replacement for Edwin Diaz. Otherwise, not a chance in hell I see that becoming a reality. Clay Holmes, everybody, finishes his first season stretched from a reliever turned starter now as a New York Met for the first time since 2018, has a 12-8 win-loss record, a 3.5 ERA, 165 innings. Shout out to Clay Holmes for being the stopper for the Mets yesterday when so many other things were going wrong in Mets land. Clay Holmes, fantastic first year as a Mets starter turned from a reliever. Sean Manaea finishes the year with a 5.6 ERA, 60 innings, needs that elbow surgery for those who don't know. Sean Manaea is having surgery on a loose body in his elbow, and that'll be it for him. And he'll be rehabbing that throughout the offseason. So, God willing, the Mets can get him healthy heading into 2026, but that too is to be determined. Nolan McLean, what a stud first year for Nolan McLean. Proved exactly why he's the ace of this rotation already. McLean, in 48 innings, has a 501 record in 8 starts for the Mets and finishes his first regular season with a 2.06 ERA and 57 strikeouts and just over a 1 whip. Shout out to McLean. Beyond McLean, we have David Pearson, who started off great in the first half, ended terribly all in the second half. Finishes the year with 168 innings pitched, the most innings pitched by a Mets pitcher, just besting Clay Holmes by 3 innings or so. Finishes the year with a 4.22 ERA, 150 strikeouts, and a just under 1.4 whip. David Pearson was nothing short of batting practice for what felt like the majority, but not every single start there in the second half. Beyond Pearson, we have Brooks Raley returning with this Mets team from reconstructed Tommy John surgery. Raley didn't return to this Mets team, mind you, until June, and it didn't matter, or at least June or July when he returned. Raley, and 25.2 innings, has a 2.45 ERA. Should not have been charged with the final runs that we saw charged on him today, but it happened. Raley, he will return to the Mets because the Mets have a club option for him heading into next season. Tyler Rogers is a reliever that I do hope returns to this Mets team. Finishes the season with a 1.98 ERA, 77 innings pitched. But if you look at the splits as a reliever with the Giants versus the Mets, they're eerily similar. He had a 1.8 ERA with the Giants, and he had a 2.3 with the Mets and 28 appearances. So you can't say Tyler Rogers was bad. He was pretty much as advertised, and that's a reliever that I would love to see back in this bullpen for 2026 and beyond. Love the Submariner and what he provided to this pen. Dylan Ross, unfortunately, didn't get a chance to make his major league debut before it was too little too late for this Mets team. But Ross is someone I'm looking forward to seeing next season. Gregory Soto, who will not be returning to this Mets bullpen. I can't see them bringing back Gregory. He finished this year with a 4.18 ERA, but as a New York Met, has a 4.5 ERA after having a 3.96 ERA and really good expected numbers there earlier this year for the Detroit Tigers. Thank you guys and gals for your donations. I will get to them shortly as I'm rapid fire breaking down everyone's individual statistics here from the 2025 regular season. Now that's come to a close. Brandon Sproat finishes his first year as a New York Met with a 4.79 ERA in 20 innings, but he was far greater than what that final line makes him out to be ERA-wise. I'm very excited and bullish about what Sproat can do in this rotation next season. We look at Jonathan, same thing. Ton had a 7.7 ERA in 18 innings. Obviously has a lot more polishing to do as a 22-year-old, but that has more to do with the Mets rushing him than it was anything else. I'm really looking forward to seeing the future of him. Ryan Stanek, who has officially ended his tenure as a New York Met. No more loaves of bread from his wifey to the Mets in the clubhouse will be happening more than likely. Stanek finishes his Mets tenure with a 5.3 ERA, including starting the ultimate demise of the Mets in this 4-0 defeat to the Miami Marlins. Stanek is that, and that is it for the Mets pitching here in the big 2025. So now let's get on to the hitting. Francisco Alvarez concludes his 2025 season with a 256 batting average, a 786 OPS, 11 home runs, and 32 RBIs, and a batting above league average, which we appreciate. Alvarez, to see what he did down the stretch here with all the injuries that he's endured, now he can get his UCL surgery on that right thumb, which is good for him. But Alvy, what a warrior. This has not been an easy year for him or for any Met for that matter, but to see the obstacles and the continued adversity that he overcame was nothing short of impressive. Alvarez, hope you have a nice, healthy, and strong offseason. We look forward to seeing you next year. Terrence, who might have played his final game as a New York Met, we will see, finishes the season with a 226 average, 5 home runs, 29 RBIs, and a 629 OPS. Remember when Mets fans wanted Terrence more than Alvarez? Like, you want to cut Alvarez? Yeah, I remember that too. It's okay to be a schmuck. It happens to the best of us. But Terrence, that is it for his potential tenure as a New York Met here from 2025. Luis Angel Acuna, 234 batting average, 8 RBIs, 16 stolen bags, 0 home runs, and 175 at-bats, and a 567 OPS. Mets utilized him loosely this year that we saw, and Luis Angel Acuna, and he is going to be a trade chip for the Mets to consider this offseason. Pete Alonso, the polar bear. We know Pete had a big year, but another year, another walk year for Pete Alonso, where he cannot even hit the 40 home run plateau. Kind of crazy. Then year one under Juan Soto, he has the greatest offensive output when looking at home runs, even over the polar bear. Alonso's season concludes 624 at-bats, 272 average, 38 home runs, 126 RBIs, 1 stolen bag, and an 871 OPS. Alonso, now the home run king for this New York Mets club, obviously wants to come back. The Mets would like to bring him back, but it's not a lock that it'll happen. Far from a certainty, which is why we're going to talk all about that uncertainty and more here in content coming up very shortly on the platform. Be on the lookout for it. Lindor finishes the season another 30-30 year, but an underwhelming year for Lindor, who couldn't even crack 90 RBIs and really fluctuated heavily in the second half of the season and was nowhere to be seen on the road up until this past week. So Lindor needs to get his splits figured out a little bit better because there was no balance this year. He was fantastic at home, and he was shit on the road. That's what it was. There's nothing else but it. Lindor, 31 home runs, 86 RBIs, 31 stolen bags, 812 average, 267 on the average, and 812 was the OPS. I apologize. Beyond Lindor, everybody, we now have Ronnie and Mauricio. Ronnie, 226 average, 6 home runs, 10 RBIs, 662 OPS is how he concludes his season with the Mets, and 168 at-bats and 4 stolen bases. And yes, the Mets purposely kept Ryan Mauricio on the roster because they wanted to ensure that they still had one more option for him for minor leagues next year versus not having at all. If they had him play 2 or 3 more games in the minor leagues this year, he would have been screwed and that option would have been gone. So yes, the Mets hurt Ronnie Mauricio's development this season for the purpose of making sure that they have more club control over him when we look at 2026 and knowing he will still have a minor league option. Yes, you heard that correctly. If you guys think that was the wrong philosophy, I do not blame you in the slightest. I'm just here to tell you that is why they more than likely did it. So that's what you get there in Ronnie, everybody. As we go on from Ronnie Mauricio and other infield options, we have Jeff McNeil, who had, by all accounts, what I thought was a very solid season for the Mets this year. Jeff finally bounced back, figured out a way to be more of that gap-to-gap hitter than just a slap hitter that he built his game off of throughout his first 5+ years of his career. McNeil, his best season in a hot minute for the Mets, if we're being honest with you. A 243 average, 12 home runs, 54 RBIs, 3 stolen bags, 746 OPS. But what Jeff was able to do, what I thought was honestly the most consistent batter we've gone from Jeff, going all the way back to his fantastic 326 average season in 2022. Jeff McNeil's tenure as a Met has probably come to an end as well, so appreciate the squirrel for all of his highs and all of his lows, because he's a guy that's a huge trade chip for this team. Mark Vientos finishes his second year as a New York Met as like kind of a full season with them, even though it wasn't full. 17 home runs, 61 RBIs, 702 OPS, and a 233 average. Quite the drop-off from the season prior, in which he played 10 less games, but still had 27 home runs, 71 RBIs, 33 walks, and had a total of a 266 average and 838 OPS. To say Mark Vientos had struggles in a sophomore slump was an understatement, and he may have played his last game as a New York Met too. Have to wonder what the Mets are going to do with their abundance of infielders, knowing that Jet Williams and others are waiting in the wings to make their debuts as soon as next season out of spring training. Now, beyond the infield, let's talk about the outfield, everybody. Starling Marte, who has most certainly played his last game as a New York Met, as this was the final year of his multi-year long contract with the New York Mets. Marte here, 270 average, 9 home runs, 34 RBIs, and 245 OPS with 7 stolen bags. A very respectable season for Marte, who blossomed in that limited platoon role in ways that we really didn't know how he was going to look, but he stepped up mightily. So thank you, Marte, for your moments. Unfortunately, that's going to come to an end, but it's going to appear that way right now. Cedric Mullins, who no Mets fan is going to miss, but I wish him well with his future endeavors regardless, because he may have sucked here, but I've always kind of had a soft spot for Cedric Mullins. Kind of sucks to see him come in the Mets and just look like a deer in headlights the way that he was. 17 home runs, 59 RBIs, and a 690 OPS for Mullins, who's now a free agent, who the Mets will most certainly not bring back. Mullins, 42 games with Mets, batted a cool, yes, you heard this correctly, a .182 with a 284 on base and a 281 slug, a 565 OPS, an absolute flop of a trade deadline pickup. While the Mets did not give up much, still a flop nonetheless for David Stearns and this Mets team. Beyond him, we have Brandon Nimmo, another Jekyll and Hyde season for Brandon Nimmo. When you look at the home runs, you look at the RBIs, you say, wow, that was a great year for Brandon. But when you know how swing and miss Nimmo has been this year, and you know how terrible he's been with working counts, such a shell of what he used to be, such a shell of the guy that the Mets invested in an 8-year contract on. Brandon Nimmo is falling quickly in the category of a player the Mets want to salary dump than he is a guy that they see down the road. And that's not at all personal slight on Nimmo. I love Brandon, and I just need him to be more consistent, because a 25 home run, 92 RBI, 13 stolen bag year is nothing to scoff at. But understanding the context of how inconsistent he had been throughout the season is notable, knowing that he was batting the heart of the lineup for the Mets more often than not. Nimmo, though, who is not going anywhere just yet, will be set to return for the 2026 season, barring changes. Beyond Brandon Nimmo, everybody, who do we have left in that outfield? Well, we have Tyrone Taylor returning from injury. TT finishes the season with a 223 average, 2 home runs, 27 RBIs, 12 stolen bags, and just under 600 OPS. Do the Mets need Tyrone Taylor back next season? No. But would I be surprised if they brought him back too? No, I would not. The Mets have clear uncertainty in center field as of now, and they're going to evaluate all options that they deem are feasible. Jared Young, an infield option for the Mets, outfield too, even though he barely played for us. A .186 average, 4 home runs, 6 RBIs, 722 OPS. Jared, if that was your final at bat as a New York Met, I wish you the best for your future endeavors. And last but not least, the most important New York Met this entire season, goes without saying. The most important season, you could almost say, in Mets team history, because no batter has ever done what Juan Soto just did this season for the New York Mets. No batter has ever put up 40 home runs, over 100 walks, over 100 RBIs, and stayed as consistent as Soto did for the most part in Mets team franchise history. 43 home runs, 105 RBIs, 38 stolen bases, and a 921 OPS is how Juan Soto concludes his year one as a New York Met, in which on a gross salary and bonus pay, he made, yes, $100 million in salary and that salary bonus. Gross, mind you. 263 average for Juan Soto. in comparison, everybody, versus how Soto fared last season with the New York Yankees, mind you, there was only a 2 at-bat difference here. We look at the totals of the following. Let me see if I can pull them up right here, right now. The total amount of hits. Juan Soto had like just over 10 more hits than he had this season that he had last year with the Yankees. Last year, he had 11 more doubles than this season. This season is actually the second lowest season in doubles that Juan Soto's ever had in his career, but I think it goes in hand because it also included the most home runs Soto's ever had in his career that we see there. He had 1 triple, 2 more home runs than last year. David Stearns won't talk to the media until tomorrow at Citi Field, which is expected, everybody. We will address David Stearns' remarks in our live stream tomorrow, so make sure that you guys are on the lookout for that. Actually, that's already a lock for what our content will be tomorrow, so be on the lookout, everybody. Our content tomorrow evening at some point, if not sooner in the day, depending on when the Stearns presser is, it'll be on reacting to David's remarks on what is next for this Mets team. That is what tomorrow's content will be. In the live stream format, in the video format, be on the lookout because we have a big video dropping separately from that. But 105 RBIs. He had 109 each of the past 2 seasons. Walks, he had 2 less than what he had last season. Strikeouts, he had a decent amount more. Actually, Juan Soto struck out more this season than any other year in his career. Soto said everything we need to be successful is there. I say we've just got to win games. That's the only thing we've got to change, win games. So Soto feels pretty confident and bullish about this Mets team moving forward, and I appreciate the optimism, Juan. I know you're not the problem right now. You're far from it. And Soto finishes with an OPS that was around like 60 points below what he had last year with the Yankees. All in all, a very good year for Juan Soto and right in direct hand with his career norms, which is what's so exciting about it. Let's get to a couple of these donations, everybody, and then let's continue answering your comments, questions, and concerns, and everything that you need to know from the Mets unfortunately faltering and now down and officially out for the rest of the season. And thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. Thank you for the fantastic coverage this season. My wish is for you to have an experience like I had in '86. I hope it can happen at some time, man. I would love to just get one in my lifetime. The bar's low right now, but thank you so much for that donation. Really appreciate the $20. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Professional certified hater with $5 donation states the following. Stearns used the dumpster dive strategy for starting pitching in 2024 when we had no expectations. Using the same strategy again in a playoff year is unacceptable. I don't disagree with you at all. And these were the concerns that we had to a degree heading into the season, especially when you saw guys like Jose Quintana still available in the free agent market, among others, and Minaya and Montas went down in spring trading. Ricky with a $5 donation. Thank you, Ricky. He states the following. Been in this community now for 4 years, ups and downs. Appreciate you, Wardy, but I really do think we need a manager with some balls. Bring back Bobby V. Yeah, Bobby's too out of the game to be considered as a manager, in my humble opinion. But I don't think we need a retread. I think if we're going to do this right, and if it ain't going to be like a Carlos Beltran, it's got to be someone who can come in and obviously have a good voice. A voice of reason, but a voice that is not going to hold back from telling you exactly how they truly feel. Ricky, thank you for that donation. I really appreciate that. Colin with the $10 holla. Thank you so much for that, Colin. Appreciate that too, everybody. But as we just relayed, the latest in Mets land, which is the Mets, unfortunately, now out of postseason play, postseason contention. We're almost at 500 likes to all of our live viewers, so continue to smash that like and subscribe on as you guys are chiming in live on a replay. Like I said, I really, really do appreciate it. But if you guys have certain comments, questions, or concerns that you guys would like me to answer before we wrap up the live show in a little bit, by all means, please let me know because I'll be more than happy to go ahead and do so. A lot of emotions, a lot of highs, a lot of lows, most certainly lows to take away from this season, no doubt about it, everybody. Now let me go ahead and double check to see what else that we have coming to the media in regards to what these players or what Mendy had to say when everything was wrapped up. Hold on. Matthew Martell, thank you so much for the donation. I would love to think Eric Chavez loses his job, but something tells me he won't. I think he's actually cooked. Like before, there's some times where we debate about, but no, I'm like firmly confident that he's cooked now. Also, guys, we might as well relay. Let's do this through Fangraphs. To conclude this, let's relay the following numbers and how the season concluded for the Mets when looking at both offense and pitching. Where do they rank across Major League Baseball? Because as we take a look at the leaders here, let's go to team batting. Let's go to this. This season, everybody. Holy shit. You are not going to believe the stat that I'm going to relay to you right here, right now. The New York Mets are somehow, some way going to finish top 5 in Major League Baseball this year. And Fangraphs is wins above replacement for total offense. Mets currently have right around 29 total WAR, which is currently the fourth best in Major League Baseball, only trailing the Chicago Cubs, the Toronto Blue Jays, and the New York Yankees. So somehow, some way, the Mets managed to have a top 5 offense statistically in baseball this season. While, yes, they struggled when looking at hitting a scoring position for a long period of time, team batting average fluctuated among many other things. But this Mets offense still was a performer. So you can't sit here and put the largest blame on the offense. It most certainly goes on the pitching. Because when we take a look at the pitching, and we know the pitching is a very different story with this team, and they were unbelievably unlucky this year. There's no doubt about it. The pitching for the Mets is a different story. New York Mets pitching staff finished the season, everybody, with the following. Mets finished 10th in baseball in WAR. I'm not even joking. 10th in baseball in WAR somehow. So that doesn't look terrible. But then you look at the following. Team ERA. Where do they stand? Team ERA, the New York Mets stand at 18th in Major League Baseball. That makes a lot more sense. Team expected ERA at 4.34 is 18th as well. So Mets pitching, for the most part, bottom 10 or so in baseball. The WAR is heavily amplified from what they did when they were 21 games above 500. It carried a lot, what we saw in that first half. Thomas, thank you for the donation. He says, thanks for a great season, brother, with your post-game shows. What pitchers should the Mets go for in 2026? We're going to talk endlessly this offseason about it, Thomas. We're going to go over all the options imaginable, but I'm going to tell you right now, the immediate reaction to what do the Mets need rotation-wise? What if I told you the Mets don't need more than one starter? I genuinely feel that way. And the reason why I feel that way is because outside of potentially adding like one true ace that's controllable, the Mets have everything in their organization already. Christian Scott, Joe Nathan, Noel McLean, and Brandon Sproat are going to have good seasons for the Mets next year. They really are. And you're going to give them a leash because now's the time to do so. Now is absolutely the time to do so. I think you're foolish if you don't give them the leash. This is what you develop these guys for. Steven, I'm not. I'm really not. If you don't think that the Mets are going to lean heavily on their internal pitching options, which David Stern said verbatim to the media a week and a half ago, that what we saw this year reaffirms exactly why they're going to heavily emphasize their development, is why you guys should be prepared for the Mets to not do anything crazy with adding to the rotation. I'm telling you guys, you're setting yourselves up for failure if you think the Mets this offseason are going to make a drastically different approach to adding pitching. It will not. With the exception of young, controllable starters available via trade, there is not going to be a single starter that the Mets are going to be inclined to sign long-term in the free agent market, nor should they probably. Nor are you going to see the Mets bend over backwards for guys on short, midterm deals. They're going to find probably one starter, but not a whole lot beyond that. The Mets currently have 7 to 8 starters under contract heading into next season. The only way my thought process changes a lot is if a lot of other things change. Note, D-Nice, you're not understanding. It's not about what I think maybe the Mets need versus what the reality is going to be. I'm mentally preparing you guys for the reality of the Mets probably not adding more than one starter. And the reason for that is, unless they trade one or multiple of Kodai Senga, David Pearson, Shamanai, etc., they have Christian Scott, Clay Holmes, Jonathan, Brandon Sproat, Noel McLean. They already have 5 starters there. And then you have a lot waiting in the wings that'll be getting to the AAA level sooner rather than later next year that we're excited by. I'm just telling you, the Mets have an abundance of internal depth with their rotation that I don't think you guys should underestimate. You can be pissed off about the team right now for sure, but I'm telling you right now, if you guys think the Mets are going to go balls to the wall crazy for rotation starters this offseason, it goes completely against what Stearns has done to this point. Maybe that's what he needs to do, considering what he did this past offseason worked so terribly. So that's a fair counter as well. But I'm just trying to help you guys get mentally prepared for why they may not do things as drastic as you're hoping in that specific regard. And that goes back to what I said. We have a lot of club control with starters. We don't have that same kind of club control and luxury with relievers, but we do with starters, most definitely. Which relievers stay? Right now, it's Brooks Raley, Huascar Brosban, hopefully the return of Tyler Rogers, hopefully the return of Edwin Diaz, and then a whole lot of question marks in which I hope guys like Dylan Ross, Ryan Lambert, Orlana, and a bunch of others blossom from the minor leagues next season, go out and improve. Because I promise you guys, we're going to see more relievers from the minor leagues impact the Mets this next season too, including a guy who's coming back from injury again. If he can stay healthy and look good, Danilo Nunez. There's a reality that Nunez could be valuable for the Mets in the way he wasn't this year. Max Kranick, remember him? Remember his value? Max Kranick coming back from reconstructive Tommy John surgery, if he stays in the organization, could be another guy that's impactful for us, even if it's not right away. They're going to sign an abundance of pitchers that you never heard of that we're going to talk about and talk about all the pros and the cons with, saying the pros that this guy can handle high leverage. The con is that this is a guy that could be cut within the first month or two. Both those things can be true when we talk about a lot of bullpen options. Send Cedric Mullins to Pluto. Well, he's a free agent, so he's kind of already there. Dane Needle, thank you so much for the donation. You need a beer. Go grab yourself a beer, my guy. That's what you got to do next. AJ Minter. Yep, he's another that very well could be finding himself coming back too. Helsley under control. No, he's a free agent, so he's more than likely walking. And I doubt the Mets are bringing Helsley back right now, unless they gave him closer money, which I don't think they're going to do. I'm not going to lie, though, guys. When you look at where the writing was on the wall, this is a good example of that. Take a look at this, everybody. Hold on. Shout out to Nasty Nate on X, a follower of mine, because he just quoted a graphic of mine from earlier this season that I want to amplify. It's going to pop up. Oh, maybe not. I could have swore I just saw it. What happened? Hold on. Folks, you see this? This was the demise. This was the demise, ladies and gentlemen. When you start a season, and the crazy thing is, how the season started was good. Like, this was good. This actually worked the first 2 months. That's the crazy thing. Without Manaea, without Montas, this actually worked. It wasn't until you saw the Senga domino fall, the Miguel domino fall, the Canning domino fall, that everything else kind of pretty much collapsed along with it. This was our starting rotation to begin the season. Actually insane, looking back on this. And Miguel, thank you. I appreciate that. And Alvarez wasn't catching either. I know. That's another crazy thing to bear in mind. You're right, because he was out with injury still. Wow. Yeah. It's hard sell. Sorry. For a team that signed Juan Soto, how is that not a terribly hard sell? Even when you're even if Manaea and Montas were healthy, it's still a relatively hard sell because it wasn't a great rotation then.